All right, we are continuing our shower renovation tiling project. If you have not seen the previous videos, be sure to search for those. We demoed the existing shower, took out the fiberglass shower insert, and also rebuilt the P-trap. So definitely check those out. In this video, we're going to be installing this fiberglass shower base or shower pan. And in subsequent future videos, we'll be tiling the walls around it. So more specifically, we're going to be leveling this thing out, and I'll show you some other considerations as to how I installed this. But first, before you even mess around with putting the shower pan in, I definitely recommend taking out any extra drywall, and you're also going to want to make sure your studs are all plumb and square with each other. So I decided to take out an extra layer of drywall up above here. My original cuts were just to take out the fiberglass insert, and now I wanted to cut around the shower arm and take out the shower arm. And so I'm going to do that right now. I didn't take this out in a prior step because I wanted to control any leaking that would be happening either right there or more specifically at the base where the shower arm meets the little brass or the little metal insert right there. By the way, you can put up a shim right there if your 2x4s back there are exposed. You can see a shim right there that serves as a brace while you unscrew a shower head and shower arm if it's giving you trouble, if it's sticky or stuck, right? Because that can definitely be a weak point and you can end up breaking that metal or that copper solder, that bond. And obviously you don't want to do that. So put a little shim up there, rest it between the 2x4 on the right and that metal piece, and it should pop right out damage free. We're also going to be cleaning out the socket, so to speak, of all that old tape and whatnot. So we'll get that nice and cleaned up and ready for a new one or to receive a new shower arm. And don't forget to remove the brace when you're done. So I'm just showing you some things I did before I installed this shower pan, right? Because, things are going to be falling down. You don't want to install the shower pan and then have to deal with this. We're also going to be recentering the socket right here for the shower arm. In the previous video, we found the center point on our drain down below, and that should pretty much be the same center point as the shower arm. So we had to move things over about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, something like that. And in my case, it was pretty simple to do because I had flex pipe down below. Obviously, call a plumber to do this part if you're not comfortable moving pipes or if it involves, disconnecting things or whatnot. But this would be the step or the stage to recenter the pipe before you get your shower pan in, just to avoid damage and drop things, like I said. All right, so we are 18 inches on center. That is the same as the drain. I'm also at this stage going to be putting in some backing. If you want to put in a shower door ever in the future, you'll need some backing right on the lip of your shower base. So I'm going to make sure, went to the store, bought some framing 2x4s, and make sure that's nice and flush. You don't want it sticking out or receding too far. And you want it super sturdy because that's where your shower door, if you choose to do that, will be anchored to. You don't want it just going in drywall, or you just don't want it hanging out through the tile, I don't think. It's better to have a 2x4, a brace on the other side of your tile. So I've got brace. I put some backing on both the right and the left side. And again, all my 2x4s, all my framing is nice and level. Nothing is sticking out. And that will be important in a future video when we put shims on the wall and then cement backer board the walls and tile the walls. You want things pretty much flush. At this point, we will also be framing out our niche, our custom shower shelf. And I've made a separate video on how to do that. So be sure to check that out. It's called Custom Shower Niche, or How to Frame a Custom Shower Niche. I think I'm saying that right. Niche. Anyway, we'll just be making a series of marks. And the idea here is to start with your finished, how much of your finished tile do you want showing and then you have to make your cut measurements minus the 2x4, because you'll be framing it with a 2x4, minus the thickness of the cement backer board, minus the thickness of the tile, minus about another 1/8 of an inch or so. You can see I've written some measurements on the drywall right there, right above, so go back and hit pause if you are interested, or again, find that other video like I said. But basically, the bottom of my shelf will be about 42 inches. The finished shelf will be about 42 inches from the ground. And I'm just going to frame it just like that. Make sure everything is nice and square. And some other considerations before you start installing some prep work, I would say. You'll want to make sure that your subfloor is pretty much smooth and even. You don't have to be neurotic about it, but I have an orbital sander and I went through and just took up some of those chunks that are sticking out, because you don't want that to affect leveling of your shower pan. And also any other encumbrances or little things. I've got a nail here that's kind of sticking out. Hope that wasn't super important, but it was definitely, or might definitely affect or rub up against, or not allow it to be completely level. So with those considerations and those prep items done, I'm going to dry fit my shower pan, and I'm just kind of looking for leveling. Just putting it in there very carefully. Make sure it fits. Make sure you're not snugged up against anything. One thing that I noticed was there was a previous grout line. I'm leaving the floor intact. I'm not redoing the floor here, but the previous grout line, and there's some silicone, basically didn't allow that lip of my new shower pan to fit really well inside. So I basically got rid of all of that. It was about 1/8 of an inch or so that really needed to go, and I will regrout that all the way up to the shower pan. So now I'm just going to be looking for leveling and noticing major. Now your shower pan might come pre-leveled. In other words, as long as your subfloor is level, then the shower pan should be level. It should sit firmly or squarely leveled on the subfloor. This shower pan, however, is going to give me a little trouble, because when I set it on, when I dry fit it, we are definitely not level. It sinks down to the back, believe it or not. It says level right there, but we don't want the actual floor to be level. We want that to run off. We want water to go into the drain. So if it's reading level, then that's a problem right there. But on the lip, there, that looks good. Let's take a look here. Let me put my camera down. You can see there's the back, the base. It is solid balsa wood as the base. So I'm pretty happy with that. But as we move the camera more toward the front, you will see it start to slope up. There's a gap between the subfloor and the front of that balsa wood. Let's get a better look at it. Let me pop it up on my sawhorses for you. So that's how it kind of should sit. But look at that lip up there. The lip kind of sticks down about 1 inch. So when you put that on a level floor, it's going to look something like this. And that, of course, is a problem. So we're going to problem solve this and get this installed nice and level. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to take a few measurements using some shims, and basically I'm going to figure out how far up that back part of the shower pan needs to go in order for it to be level and for water to drain properly on all, if water's on all 4 sides or in a 360-degree rotation around the drain. So I'm just doing some tests here. Just got a piece of Tupperware down there and just watching to see how far where the water's running, where it's stopping, and making my adjustments with my shims underneath. When I'm pretty content that things need to be level, I will take those measurements of the shims and actually replicate it and put it underneath the shower pan and dry fit things back in. And I don't have to brace it up super well. I just need to get an idea of where it needs to be level, if that makes sense. And I'll retake some leveling measurements. And we're generally looking pretty good. So I will make some marks as to where this needs to be with a big, thick Black Magic marker, permanent marker, on those studs. So that every time I dry fit this in, if it doesn't line up with those studs, I'll know it's not level. In the previous video, we rebuilt the P-trap. And so once things are level and dry fit, you might want to take this stage to learn about, if you haven't already, because they kind of go together. It's not a completely linear process, right? For the purposes of these videos, they are, or I've tried to make them linear for you. But we're going to be dry fitting the runner drain, the PVC pipe there, and the brass drain fitting. And of course, we're not permanently installing. We're just dry fitting to see where we need to make the cuts on our runner tube. And you'll want to make sure your shower pan is level and where you want it to be before you make that measurement, right? You don't want to cut all your pipes and rebuild your P-trap based on a shower pan that is not level. So this is me marking when I rebuilt the P-trap, my new dry fittings. The markings are arbitrary. It doesn't matter what you call them, just as long as you remember where they need to go. The lines need to line up with each other when you go to permanently glue those PVC pipe pieces together. So this is kind of everything all dry fit together and marked. And so now I already showed all this in the previous video. So I'll kind of fast forward here. I'm not going to repeat everything, but we are here gluing the P-trap together permanently using primer and glue. And we're prepping all of our parts properly, making sure things are filed down, clean. We're moving quickly, not panicking as this stuff dries, and we're holding it for 30 seconds or so or more. But again, I explained that all in a previous video. So when you're pretty happy with your pipes, your PVC, or your P-trap rebuilt, we can go ahead and install the 2-inch brass drain. And I'm using plumber's putty. You might prefer to use 100% silicone, or your drain that you have might actually require that. So you'll need to read up on that and do a little research which one is better. I have landed on plumber's putty. I think it's cleaner. It's been around a little longer. It's a little thicker, but that's just my personal preference, and I'd probably get some heat on that. Lots of people probably prefer, or they do, based on my research. All right, next we'll take to install that drain, on the underside, we'll take the thin rubber gasket, a paper gasket, and the brass nut. In that order, that paper gasket is important. It is not trash. And we will tighten that up. You'll want to tighten by hand, and you'll notice it's pretty firm. There's a lot of resistance, not initially, of course, but as you basically tighten that up, all that plumber's putty is... that stuff's pretty thick and durable. It's going to take a little bit of extra torque, so to speak, to push that drain down through all that plumber's putty. So look at that brass drain. It's actually going down as I turn it. That plumber's putty is pushing out more and more. So you'll want to do that until your brass drain reaches the bottom of your shower pan, and then give it an extra few little twists. You can reuse this stuff, by the way, and don't let it touch your shower pan to a significant degree. I don't have a particular reason, but I don't want the acids or the oils or whatever they put in this stuff to have too much contact with the fiberglass. I don't want it to potentially stain or anything like that. And I'll use my finger and a little rag to kind of wipe some of that excess stuff away, some of those little crumbs. So our drain is installed on our shower pan. Our P-trap has been rebuilt, and the runner is directly on center, the runner PVC drain right there. And now I'm going to put down some wood braces that basically simulate those shims, and I'm going to screw those to the subfloor. And I'm going to dry fit everything back in. Again, making sure those are level. I'm also going to test the drain. I'm going to dry fit this. By installing the rubber gasket, I put a little soap on it so it slips in and out easier. And it should go, that little black rubber gasket should go all the way down and seat squared on the bottom of the brass metal ring. So you kind of push it down there with your fingers and use a little screwdriver. Don't puncture it or damage it, obviously, in any way. Just kind of scoot it down there. And then to get this thing back out, you'll just lift up the shower pan because everything's dry fit and loose. You'll just lift up the shower pan after you take out this little castle nut that I'll show you here in just a second. And it should pop that gasket right out. By the way, you'll want to put a little something down the drain. So your tool, it comes with a little tightening tool. You'll see here in a second. That doesn't fall down at the drain. And you will hand tighten that castle nut over the rubber gasket, and it will depress that rubber gasket, creating a watertight seal. Or that is the idea. And we'll take our little tool here, pop it down in between any of those little castle nut spaces. And there's a hole in the middle where you can give it a little extra quarter turn or so. Well, there's no rule on how many. I mean, it could take a lot more than a quarter turn. You just want it to be tight and firm. What I like to do is pretty much go as far as it'll go there, and then take a little pipe wrench to finish it off. And we're going to actually test it before we install permanently this shower base. I have a hose here, and everything is dry fit. And I'm going to turn it on full blast. And this water is coming out of an adjacent sink faucet. I had a little adapter. You could just use, some buckets of water and pour it in should you choose to test it beforehand. But my fear was getting all this built and set up, right? And then I have a leak and there's no turning back. So I wanted to test for leakage and, water entry at every stage. I even went as far as putting some polyurethane, some plastic underneath and around the drain, the P-trap. So if there's any water, the water will trickle down, and I have a little anchor, a little plastic wall anchor, and it will actually go through that and travel through that wall anchor and come out on the ceiling on my first floor. The bathroom's on the second floor. So I can check that every day to see, is it leaking or not? And we are dry. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take some shims, and we're not going to be, doing this quite yet, but we're just going to make sure our shims, we're happy with that. And the next consideration we need to make before we actually do this is to decide, do we want, roofing nails? Do we want deck screws? Do we want stainless steel? Do we want these backerboard screws? So I did a test and a separate video if you want to see what that basically looks like. But long story short here, and your instruction manual might actually call for roofing nails or a flathead nail versus specific screws. So you definitely want to check that out. You could void your warranty potentially. But I wasn't happy with roofing nails. They have too broad of a head on them, and they could potentially squeak and make noise. They also don't bite super well. They can be pulled out really easily. So I did a test with some stainless steel screws and some backerboard screws, countersunk and not. And I decided to go with the backerboard screws, and I countersunk the heads there so they don't stick out too much. So what I'm doing here is pre-drilling through the fiberglass pan as indicated in my instructions, and I also drilled my countersinks for those larger than normal backerboard heads. So with that done, we're pretty much ready here to install the shower pan. Now I put down some polyurethane and cut it to size and stapled it because I wasn't a fan, again, reducing risk here. I didn't want to, this is the first time that I've put down a mortar bed. I didn't want to mess this up. If I didn't get it right, I wanted to be able to pull everything back out. And also, this polyurethane will prevent the mortar bed apparently from drying out over the years. Or that wood subfloor will pull moisture out of the mortar bed that we're going to be putting down. So that's why I put a little layer of polyurethane down. And then the brown circles there are my marks where I want to add additional support. And I also made these little cutouts because I don't want the mortar to be sticking to the bottom side of my shower pan. I just want it to rest upon it. I want to be able to pull it out and make adjustments if I mess this thing up. So I have some thin set, and I might get some heat on this too. It might be better to use the actual mortar bed stuff. But from what I also read, we could use, thin set or grout or anything that will be basically cementing or hardening. So I'll make my little droplets here and put them on the brown. And I want to make sure they're high enough, right? Because I'm going to squish the shower pan down, and I want to make sure that there's enough height. So when it squishes, it will provide support as indicated. Then I'll cover them up so it doesn't stick to the top of my shower pan. And I have no idea if this is an effective way. I will be letting you know in subsequent videos how this worked. But I'm going to carefully drop it down. And you could choose to have it stick to the bottom of your shower pan at this point if you feel really confident and comfortable. If I messed this up, I didn't want to have to go clean it out, right? Clean this stuff off. That would be a huge pain in the butt to scrape and scrub this off the bottom of that sprayed on fiberglass. All right, so I'm going to very carefully put that PVC drain in as we did before. Make sure everything is seated, and I will be putting pressure. Here's another view at what's happening, or what has happened as it squished down. You could see it is providing adequate support as planned. Now I'm going to push everything down and put a lot of weight on it, about 200 pounds or so. And I'm not going to mess around with this. This is just going to sit on it, and it's going to sit there for 3 days or so while this stuff completely cures, maybe even more. I will, though, sneak the towel up and install the drain because I want that to be considered. I don't want to do that later. It might affect the mortar underneath. And once 3 days later, maybe a week later, I waited about 4 days actually. I went back, and before I started bouncing around on this thing, I tightened it down. Put those shims back there, and you could see I countersunk those screws and put them all in. I started with the back and worked my way forward, and we are completely solid. I am super happy at this point. There's no squeaking, there's no moving. Again, everything is attached to the 2x4 framing. We are good to go. So at this point, I will test my drain again, and I will snap off. We are completely dry, and I will snap off the shims. And in the next video, we're going to be building out the 2x4 wall a little bit using some more shims, and then cement backer boarding, and then of course tiling. So be sure to stay with me and check those out. And also don't forget to subscribe if you have not, if you want more do-it-yourself home projects and cool home product reviews. Thanks.